Okay, next up, all our speakers, please come up as I'm announcing your name. Ashmeet Sidana of Engineering Capital, who will be moderating this session. And he has promised me that the temperature is going to get rising. So hold on to your seats. Then we have Smita Hashim, CPO, Zoom. She's ex-Google, ex-Microsoft, and what else. But I'll let the speakers introduce themselves, or Ashmeet will do the favor. Sean White, Inflection, Inflection.ai. We have Sid Sheth from D-Matrix. And last but not the least, Puneet Arora from Yellow.ai. Man, I memorized all those names so well. I'm so proud of myself. Have a seat, everybody, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Surbhi. It's the last panel, so hopefully we can keep it a little exciting, for which I will say please prepare some questions. There's nothing like having an interactive audience, and we certainly have an interesting topic today. The official topic is enterprise transformation. Will it be AI-led or human-led? I think you can reduce this question to who's going to get laid off by AI? Okay, so keep that thought in the back of your head. I hope that we'll be able to get to that question and really understand the essence of that question. But let's first get some background set, and let's start with some introductions. So I'm going to request my panelists to do some quick introductions over here, starting with Smita.
Hi, everyone. Smita Hashim. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Zoom. As Surbhi said, I worked in tech for a long time, Microsoft, Google, and I'm really excited to be at Zoom at this time when work has changed so much and AI is coming in. I think some of the most exciting times I've ever lived in, so it's great to be a part of these, and it's great to be here.
Thank you, Smita. Sean?
Thanks. Hi, my name is Sean White. I am the CEO of Inflection AI. Before that, I was the Chief R&D Officer of Mozilla, which makes Firefox. Some of you have used Firefox, maybe. Before that, I moved out here in the late 80s because I was really excited about computer science, and I still am.
And Sean, tell us a little bit about Inflection AI for those people who are not familiar with the company, unlike Zoom, which I think everyone is familiar with.
Well, let me check. How many of you have either heard of or used a chatbot called Pi? Some of you? Okay. So that was our first product. The company was founded a few years ago and was one of the 7 companies that could actually build a really large language model. So we joined the White House commitments on growing these AI systems and doing it in some reasonable way. We have 350 billion parameter models, 800 billion parameter models. And the company, which originally was founded by Mustafa Suleyman and Reid Hoffman, had started off by focusing on Pi as a chatbot and that research. When I joined, we started shifting that, so we have an API where people can access all of the high EQ and conversational intelligence of those systems and those models, as well as a whole set of fine-tuning as a service programs, and then a platform where we take and put the Inflection inference and a number of other products as a suite of products into the enterprise.
Wonderful. Thank you. Sid?
Hey, everyone. I'm Sid Sheth, founder and CEO at D-Matrix. So for those of you who heard Vishal's talk, he talked a little bit about the compute and infra layer. If you look at the AI tech stack, there is compute, there is a model layer, there is application layer. D-Matrix focuses a lot on the compute and infra layer. And what I want to leave you guys with today, hopefully, is a lot of the value is currently being captured at the compute and infra layer because of what NVIDIA is doing. But how does that really translate to what's happening at the application layer, right? So there is direct dependencies in terms of what the compute can do to enable successful development of applications, and that's what I'll try to focus on today. By the way, just a quick show of hands. How many folks here are in the compute and infra business? Yeah, I'm not surprised. It's typically a very few. I have some company here. Typically, I'm the only guy in the room. but I think today, hopefully, we can talk a little bit about how this translates into value creation at the application layer.
Hello, everybody. Puneet Arora. I'm president of Global Field Operations at Yellow.ai. Yellow is a leader in the AI-based agent market space. So we provide AI agents for customer service and employee service transactions, catering to very large, mid-sized and large enterprises. So roughly about 650 plus enterprises use us to augment what human agents do with AI for service and support.
Thank you, Puneet. So just continuing to set the stage, I want to start by asking a basic question. Everybody's using AI, everybody's familiar with AI. AI is the hot thing that we're all using. How are you striking the balance today in your organizations between what belongs to AI and what belongs to humans? Where is that line today in the organization?
So I don't know if you're thinking so much about where to draw the line. It's too early to draw the line. But what we are doing is encouraging the use of AI across all workloads. There are some workloads which are very amenable to AI, customer support. We have a product called Zoom Virtual Agent, Zoom Contact Center. We use our own products, and we continue to optimize, grow, monitor the success rates. So that's a very kind of well-established, well-known workload. But apart from that, it's being applied everywhere. Engineers are looking at it for coding. Product managers are looking at it to generate PRDs. We have our own Zoom AI companion generative assistant, which is transcribing and analyzing all meetings. So we are applying it across everything, really as a way to both augment humans, have them what we call free up time to really focus on what matters, which is often connecting conversations. We are in the business of conversations. So that's where our focus is at, and really encouraging to become AI practitioners, whether using Zoom tools or third-party tools.
Yeah, I would say we roughly have the same answer, which is that it shows up everywhere. So we have people who are using, and not just our own systems. I mean, obviously, we will use Pi, and we will use Inflection, and we use Insights and things like that. But we really encourage our team to try out all the different systems. And so, when Meta AI was released on Tuesday, we were over at LlamaCon. We wanted to try those things out as well. And that shows up. A number of people have already talked about, for instance, programming and how that accelerates development, or just even prototyping, or even creating a PRD, how it accelerates the communications. And for us, that's been really interesting. For instance, because our system has such high EQ, some of those things which are sort of soft skills, soft ROI, you see increasing in the way that you communicate with each other.
So broadly speaking, we have two answers right now, which I'll put in the everything category, that we're using it across the board. Remember, the framing for this panel is who's going to get laid off. So that's how I'm interpreting these questions. With that framing, I'm going to leave it with you two to take the answer, and then we'll take it forward.
Okay. I mean, at D-Matrix, our situation is a little different, right? We are building silicon, and we build compute infrastructure, which involves a lot of very specialized expertise. It's tough to find, folks who can do this stuff. So what we are not AI or human right now. We are AI and human at this point. What I personally, tell my team is try to upskill yourself. We build a lot of hardware, but the team is 250 people. Half of it is software. So there's about 130 people in the company who are building software, and they actively use things like Copilot, whatnot, to kind of, Cursor, et cetera, to kind of do a lot of software development. So currently our model is more AI and human. We are trying to bring AI into different parts of the organization, and I strongly encourage my team, go upskill. Don't fear this, embrace it. If you fear it, you won't be relevant over the long term. If you embrace it, you will likely be more relevant over the long term. Some people respond, some people don't. And the ones that do will likely be around for a longer time. The ones that won't most likely will fall off, right? But we give them the opportunity.
Yeah, I'll provide a different perspective to the answer here. So I'll give we power solutions, customer service solutions for 600 plus customers, and on average they see between 30 to 70, 80, even 90% deflection rates. So Ashmeet, your question was, where's that balance, right? So many of our customers, when pings are coming to them for customer support, our AI agents are deflecting as much as 70, 80% of those. But the balance there comes between human and agents is now based on complexity. So where we are seeing companies and our solutions making impact is at that line of complexity. What's a complex piece of support that cannot be handled by an AI agent versus can be handled by a human agent? So it's that complexity piece that we're seeing. It might be a very simple question. Hey, I need to update my password. Easy to do. Or it might be something a lot more complex that an AI agent can't do. So that balance of where we're seeing where AI is effective is currently on the non-complex side. When it becomes very, very complex is when we're seeing humans still being needed.
So Puneet, I think what you're saying is that the role of the employee is changing.
100%.
The role of the person in the organization changing because of AI, and complexity seems to be one of the dimensions where we can make this distinction between what's AI and what's not. And yet on the other side, when we talk about AI today in the popular press, we talk about AGI and Terminator and AI taking over the world and replacing doctors and things which we would normally perceive as complex. So help me square this circle. What is the reason? Why is there this huge disconnect between how AI is practically being implemented in the enterprise today, how the role is changing today, and where do you see that going? And we can take it in any order.
Maybe I'll add one thing, and it's not from myself, but a conversation I had with our council today. So any AI company, if you're working globally, of course, you need your own general counsel because there's lots happening in the legal sphere. And I was talking to him about how it's changing his role. And there are things that we might have spent $100,000 on before, aggregating information or regulations and things like that. And now it happens over the course of minutes using some of the tools that we have. And that provides some interesting, well, first, fantastic acceleration, but also some interesting challenges, right? We see this with our, we're a couple blocks off of Stanford, right? And so we have some very senior developers and scientists, and then we have people who just graduated. And historically, there would be things that you would have them do, same thing in the legal profession. And now that's kind of being automated. And so one of the interesting changes is how are you actually thinking about, mentoring and bringing some of those folks up when the kind of grunt work we used to have to do is gone.
So complexity, speed, removing the grunt work, that seems to be interesting dimensions. Are there other aspects of the role that are changing?
I think some of the things which we see coming out in terms of practical applications, for example, all the work which Google has done with in terms of like the medical research and proteins and detection of those, I think that massive amount of data and converting it into something which is tangible, comprehensible, and it can actually start benefiting people, that to me, those things are amazing. Some of the things which I feel like we're not seeing as much of, but we are hearing talk about is robotics. How will that move to a different dimension when you actually have physical animate objects doing the work, and then it starts moving to a different level. But the popular press hype and the reality, there's always going to be a huge gap, and I think that's a journey we all are on. I feel like things are moving in a good direction. I use a lot of deep research. I mean, it's wonderful to get all the answers quickly, but having said that, I still read it over to make sure that it makes sense, and you still have to digest it, and you have to figure out what you do with it or if you agree with it. So the role of humans is very much still there. I don't think AI is just running our lives at this point.
If I can add to that, Sean, to your point, yeah, with complexity comes what people will end up doing. Let me extrapolate on that a little bit more. As I said, we're in many cases deflecting up to 80% of inbound customer support calls. But in reality, we're seeing roughly about a 10% reduction in humans to do that. So where are those people going? Those people are being upskilled to go and handle a lot more of the complex pieces, to your point. They're doing more, to both of your points, they're doing a lot more complex things. So the simple things we're deflecting, and AI agents do a phenomenal job of that because they're always available and always have the tenacity to get those things done. But it's the complexity that now people are shifting towards. So going into lifelong learning and going and learning deeper, learning wider, that's where we're seeing those humans moving towards.
I want to bring the audience into the conversation because there's a lot of very smart people here and resources that we don't always get access to. So if you have questions, get them ready. But I want to start with a quick poll on just the question that Smita brought up over here. You know, robotics, moving from the land of bits to the land of atoms, when things become physical, that's when we see dramatic changes. So let me just do a quick poll. How many people feel that we will see, because of robotics, changes in our lives in the next year and next 5 years? So let's start with the next year. How many people think that? Wow, it's a pretty good number. And so by definition, in 5 years, the number should be even higher, right? So we are robotic optimists sitting in this room over here. Lots of people believe we are going to see that. Anyone here has personally had any interaction with a robotic system that they have used which changed their life? I'll give you one example from my life. I own a Rotimatic. Obviously, I'm Indian. A lot of you are Indians over here. They sell themselves as a robotic roti maker. It changed my life. My wife is not Indian. I love Indian food. Press a button and you can get a roti. Anybody here has used any other robotic system?
Roomba.
Okay, Roomba. Sorry. And other examples? Okay, wonderful. Okay. Okay.
Ostensibly, a Waymo counts, right?
For sure, a Waymo counts. I was waiting for that because that's a highly complex task, which has been automated or is on the verge of automation. Just depends on how you define that. So it's a little hard for me to see because of the light over here.
But these are not but a lot of these are not generative AI. It's good old determined. I mean, it's really AI which has been built over a long time. I mean, Waymo better not hallucinate. You know, it better get things right. So.
For sure, and there's no reason to limit ourselves to generative AI. I'm so glad, Smita, that you brought up that distinction. A lot of people, when you say AI, they just think that you're talking about generative AI. In reality, of course, AI is much bigger than that. And there's all of machine learning. There's so many things that you can do with AI that are not generative AI, which is also going to have an impact on the enterprise and do that. I thought I saw someone raise their hand for a question in the back over there. I'm not 100% sure if that was a question. If you have one, jump in. This is a great time to do that. I think I see one in the front over here. So please go ahead.
I had a question about the support model that you mentioned, that mundane things would be handled by AI and more complex things will be handled by the engineers. So typically, if I think of a model, we have level 1, level 2, level 3 support, and most of the trivial works goes to the lowest level of support. And if most of that is being automated by AI, what is happening to all those people? Do they all upskill to next level?
Yeah, this is a really good question which comes up, that if you think that AI will only handle mundane tasks and the more complex tasks will be handled by humans, then all humans have to be upskilled at some level to be able to take those tasks on. So how do you feel that will emerge over there? I mean, classic economic theory is that you have a competitive advantage, people do what is better for them. So if you think of us versus AI, the places where we have an advantage is where humans will end up doing that job. But I'm curious how you think about it in the enterprise as we are going through this transformation. What are the jobs which people will have to upskill themselves to take on?
So I do have a philosophy about that, which is, well, first, I'm definitely on the side of giving humans more agency, giving them superpowers as opposed to replacing them. You know, I think we were talking earlier, I'm not as interested in AGI as opposed to, you know, how do we make humans' lives better? And so one aspect of that, and you know, upscaling, I think, is where you are giving people additional tools. I lost my train of thought. Crap. You go, and then I'll remember it.
Yeah, I also think it's all about giving tools and agency and bringing your employees along on the journey. And most of them are pretty excited. They actually want to use different tools. They're trying them out. Like, come on, we all have to agree, everyone is using ChatGPT at this point. Everyone, pretty much. So people are using it. They're seeing the power of it. I think if you facilitate that, there is a desire, at least we see. There's fears around data leakage and governance and, you know, and privacy and all of those things. But at the employee level, there's a hunger to use more and more tools. So I think if we enable that in a way that is cautious, but also gives opportunities to experiment. It's helpful. For example, for my team, I have a team, as you can imagine, there's lots of product managers. I encourage them to find tools and for them to use them, and as they use them, to share how they use them. And if there's something interesting from there, then we take that and we expand it. And sometimes that interesting work also helps us improve our products. So I think that's the approach that we are taking. We have a lot of enterprise customers, as you can imagine. When we see our enterprise customers, we see them also beginning to turn on AI. We offer Zoom AI Companion. They're turning it on, but the widespread deployment, I feel like people are still getting to that point. So it's a journey people are on. I think companies that will allow for more experimentation and more encouragement of use, I feel like the upskilling happens as part of that.
So I did remember the point, and thanks for your patience. I pulled an all-nighter last night.
So no layoffs yet, at
that-
least by Smita's definition. We
that's
haven't
what-
laid anyone off yet, so let's keep going.
What I was trying to remember was a discussion that we had at work, because with early social media, there was this really strong push around grabbing your attention. And so I remember having a conversation with this one Stanford professor, Terry Winograd, about how your attention was going to be the most scarce resource you possibly could have, right? And I think that played out over the last couple decades. And now, as we're actually getting sort of these tools that let us reach a higher cognitive level, it's not so much the attention, but really your intention and how you articulate that and how you describe what it is you want and how you need. And I think that resource actually, and that training, how we actually describe, like a product manager, what you actually want and what you need, that actually is going to be one of the most difficult things for us to start training up.
So I just had one point to make, right? I'm sure most of you have heard of Jiwon's paradox, right? A lot of chatter about it right now. And I'm an optimist in this particular area, where every time you have one of these platform shifts, there's always this concern that, oh my God, the technology is coming in and it's going to cannibalize some of the jobs that humans used to do. But historically, it has been proven every time this has happened, the jobs, the humans upskilled, and the opportunities that they created led to even more jobs than were there before, right? So I think AI is not going to be any different. Humans will upskill, create opportunities. Companies will probably get created. Entrepreneurship will probably get democratized. We are going to talk about one-person companies, and opportunities will grow. So over time, I think you should see even more jobs coming into the workforce. Different skill, but certainly more jobs coming into the workforce.
So you brought up the idea of a one-person company. I want to poll the audience on this, and I want to get a sense from them. How long? So the framing of the question here is, and then I'll have the panel chime in once we know where the audience is sitting. So this is the imaginary company where you only have one employee, presumably the CEO, or a very small number of people. So I'll give you some freedom. Let's call it 10 people doing $100 million in business. How long before we see that? Show of hands. Are we 1 year away? Couple of hands. Are we 5 years away? Wow, most people think we are within 5 years. 10 years away? Anybody who thinks we are never going to see that? Okay, nobody wants to take the position that we are never going to see that. Wow. Okay, so at least we are all headed in the same direction. Well, that's what I said. We're all headed in the same direction. Fewer employees who've all been upskilled, yet no one has been laid off. And we're going to build these $100 million businesses with this small number of employees. I'm being a little bit facetious about it, but I want to get a serious perspective on what does this organization look like as we develop over the next 1, 3, 5 years. I'm not talking about 50 years away when, who knows what the world looks like. What does the enterprise look like? How do we evolve? What is this change?
I feel like the jury is still out on this one. We are seeing, and I think today in New York Times, there was an article about a company, if I remember correct, it's called Gamma, 28 people and serving a large number of customers. I don't remember the revenue. But 100 million, is 100 million the limit? Like, how far can you go? And at what point do you start getting at what point do you have to really bring in a lot of the human governance, human organizations to support your customers, to work with them, your sales teams? I mean, how far do you go? I don't think anyone who is running a meaningful business will stop at 100 million. You have to keep going beyond that. So I think companies can start, and we're already seeing a lot of companies start with a small set of people, rapidly get to revenue, and then start increasing it. But where would they run into limits and more people would come in? I think it's too early to say. So we will see the start, but I also then, I was hearing about this company which just got into business really fast, but then they had to get out of business because the security was not robust on their product, which was coded by generative AI. So I think we just have to be careful on those kind of things, but the path is starting. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. I don't think, it's going to be that clear cut that we'll be able to run businesses with 1, 2, 10 people right away. Look, at the end of the day, you've got to, as a sales leader, give me a position where we're doing $100 million in revenue without any people. I'll be the first to sign up for that. I promise you that. But I'm not seeing that happen. You need people to manage other people. At the end of the day, you're working with people in other places. We tried by bringing in, on the go-to-market side, bringing in AI solutions to do outbound dialing, initial call screening, aspects of what we're doing with customer success, all through AI. And yeah, we've driven some efficiency, but that doesn't mean the number of people has dropped. We still need those people. People talk to people. People want to work with people. People buy from people. That's the first lesson I ever learned in sales. And I don't see those, not at least in the near future. 5, 10 years down the road, maybe structures change because mundane jobs are done by AI, but I can't see us going to that kind of a model right away. I think the jury is still out.
You said something interesting, which is people manage people.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of talk of RPA, and certainly processes are not people. But I wonder what the cognitive limit is for that. So I had someone giving a presentation a couple days ago where they were saying, you will each have access to 1,000 agents. And at first that sounds fantastic. I have an army of 1,000 agents doing things. But can you imagine managing 1,000 agents? Manage 1,000 people? It's unclear. I think we'll need different kinds of structures for how we think about that.
Different structures, to a certain extent, some of the roles, I think, some of those roles that those 1,000 agents do, that can be managed through agents as well, to some extent. But as that starts coming together, you need people to manage that.
Sid, do you want to add something to that? Or
yeah.
Smita, do you want to
I think it's not an all or nothing thing, right? I think it happens in phases. You can look at companies that exist today, and as they start introducing AI, they peel off layers, right? And they start approaching this grand vision, as we say, one-person company, which is, I agree, is the jury's out, it's far out in time. But then what about companies that are getting formed today? If you're a company starting clean slate, you know your product. I don't think we're there today, but maybe in we said 5 years is where a lot of people in the room felt we could be there. Say in 5 years from now, you have an entrepreneur going out there, starting a company. They know what product they want to build. They know their customer. Agents have made a lot of progress. Is that an option for a company starting native from the grounds up to start as a one-person company? For a certain period of time, maybe over time they scale up with other people, but at least for the first few critical years of the startup's life, they can live as a one-person company before they kind of scale up.
So I don't know about you, but I heard a lot of skepticism here on the panel in terms of this, proverbial one-person company. And that's a disconnect from the poll, just in terms of in 5 years, for sure, we're going to have this one-person company. And so for the entrepreneurs in the audience, anytime you see a disconnect like that, there's some opportunity there, because both things cannot be simultaneously true. Somebody has to be wrong in that. And so, there's a disconnect, there's some opportunity over there. So let me narrow it down for you, and then again, we'll do some Q&A, and we can take the conversation in whatever direction you want to. So here's the simple question. Let's narrow down this employment question and these broad, general observations about enterprises and upskilling, et cetera, to programmers. Programmers are near and dear to us here in Silicon Valley. That's what many of us do or think about of our companies as. how many of you believe that in 5 years, we will have more or less demand for programmers? So let's first go with more demand for programmers. How many people believe more? Okay, very few. Much less than I would have thought. So everyone else believes we will have less demand for programmers. Is that true? Everybody believes that we are going to have less demand for programmers. So the demand for programming has peaked, is what we believe right now in the enterprise.
Ashmeet, can you...
What
can
does
you-
programming
Joseph,
mean, though?
Exactly. Can you please define programmer?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that's a really good question, Navneet. I was hoping to avoid having to do that. You know, software developer, programmer, engineer, broadly speaking, because those roles have changed over time, and I don't know if we have time to debate. It gets philosophical, where that line really is.
But the reason it's important is, like at Mozilla, there was a set of people who would say, if you don't program in C++, you are not a programmer.
Great point.
But then there was, of course, another set of people who said, well, look, if you do CSS and HTML and JavaScript, of course you're a programmer. And I think a part of this is we have always historically gone one level of indirection. That's what a high-level language is, right? It takes a level of indirection. So now we're describing
So
things.
why vibe coders are not programmers, right?
I think it's a good
That's
question.
the real distinction, and maybe that's the line, because if you're vibe coding, you're probably not a programmer, at least in the way people imagine it today. You're giving instructions to a program. So let's settle on that definition, and then again, we'll probably end with, we'll try and go in a different direction. So in 5 years, programmers, these are people who are not vibe coders, whether it's C++, whether it's JavaScript, whether it's HTML, they're programming, there will be fewer of those than there are today, right? That's what most of us are saying, that there will be fewer of them than there are today. Is that the consensus on the panel also, and why? For the record, I don't believe that, but let's keep going.
I just never feel like I've seen that curve go that way. So I believe we will continue to need more. I mean, Arvind was saying this earlier. It's still hard to get more engineers to do the things you need to do.
Wow, I love it. That's amazing. And I think the analogy for me is really with compute cycles. When I went to school, you could actually build a computer on a breadboard, and you could actually, run a few cycles on it and do something interesting. And people were like, what would you ever do with a million, a billion, a trillion? And it just keeps going. And we keep finding need for it. Now, of course, the answer is simple. We're just going to train an LLM and just keep training forever, is where all the compute cycles are going. OK, other questions. Let's take it in a different direction. I see someone with an eager hand right here. OK, Surbi has the microphone nearer, so the microphone wins.
All right. Thanks a lot, Surbi. And then I'm truly surprised with the hand raise. At 10-year mark, there was not a single hand raise. So everybody believed that 10 people company are possible who will build a unicorn. I asked this question to at least 20 extremists. And Ashmeet, if you allow me, I run an education company. We teach young kids. And then suppose if you have a 10-year-old child, and our beauty is we bring a cohort, another 4, 5, 6 kids, in that cohort. And I could not find a single dad where I'm saying that, what about if I bring another 5 kids who are just bots? Would you be comfortable? So one, if you allow me, just a hand raise, anybody of you, if you have a 10-year-old child and I'm running a classroom with another 5 or 6 kids who are bots, would you be comfortable? Okay. And then I'd love to get your
let's have
input.
the panel weigh in on that, because I think we're here to learn from their expertise.
I love to see if you see future where, as parents, we will be comfortable. I could not find a single person so far.
I think there's some doubt, there's some ambiguity about how the question is being framed. The question is, are you comfortable with a 10-year-old child not getting that education to be whatever that particular function is? Am I framing it
bots
correctly?
in the same class as your children, right? Do you have your children attend classes where bots are being trained or being...
At the same time, right. In other words, bots and children are treated the same way from an education perspective. I think that's the framing.
It's a very interesting question. I haven't really thought about it. I honestly don't have a perspective on it. It just sounds a little bit like it's too outside my imagination to actually give a useful answer over here. So.
Yeah, it's pretty broad, right? Because I mean, what are we talking about training the kids, right? I mean, I think creative pursuits. I think creativity is human, very, very human, right? And I don't see how you could be training, kids and bots, on creativity, right? I think humans will always lead the frontier on creativity. So I think there are areas where I don't think they coexist, right? So there's always areas you can have your kids train in. And
they also learn different ways. They learn different ways, yeah. Not exactly I actually think it would be okay from my perspective. And I have a 10-year-old boy. I saw him the other day. This was last week. He had Gemini open, and he was asking math questions from Gemini. At 10 years old, he was doing that. I guess I think there's a lot to learn from each other. If I look at the Montessori model, right, that's what it is. You've got kids of different ages, different levels, all learning together. So I would say, I think it's possible. I would be open to it.
Okay, so we can get into some philosophical, ethical questions if we go down that path, and I don't think that's really the goal of the panel today. So I want to bring it back to the audience. There was someone here with a question. Navneet is going to help us with a microphone.
Hi, this panel is about enterprise transformation, AI-led or human-led. One question I have is, are there any industries or type of organizations which you see getting disappear as a total enterprise or getting contracted heavily because of AI, like contact centers? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can answer that because I'm in that space. So I do think contact centers will, when you look at agentic AI today, that's one of the biggest use cases and biggest areas where AI is playing a big part, and we're obviously front and center in that. As I mentioned earlier, I think as of today, we're seeing 10-ish% of where companies are coming and saying we've reduced labor while we're delivering 70-80% deflection rates of calls and emails and chats coming in for support. But that's today. I think as models grow, I think as becomes more open, I definitely see in that market, in contact center, call centers, etc. I definitely see that being one area where we will see AI taking a very large place of human agents.
Okay, Puneet is shorting all the BPOs in India. So, other perspectives on the panel?
I think contact center is a very good space. That's where we are seeing a lot of results. I also think it's a progressive change because even the bird-based models were they were getting you to 50%, 60%. Now you can go further with generative AI. Some of the hallucinations increase. But the other role which AI is also playing is it's empowering the human agent who gets the escalation to be more efficient as well. So I do think we will see the nature of contact centers change. And I do think we'll see more efficiencies over there. But the AI itself, I see it as playing a role as a virtual agent, but also through things like expert assist and helping the support agents out. So,
I agree with you. That's where complexity comes in. That's where now you've got AI helping human agents handle a lot more complex issues.
Yeah, and then even like tier 2 escalations, right? So, yeah.
Okay, I've been told we have time for only one last question, and then I will ask my esteemed panel here for practical advice on AI. So who's going to get the last question over here?
I'm sorry.
It's very hard for me to see, so I'm going to leave the discretion to Navneet.
She wins.
Okay, Anshu always wins. So.
Thank you.
Okay, Anshu, all
Thank
yours.
You. So my question is a little controversial probably, but who is responsible if your AI or AI agent makes a business-altering mistake? Is it the developer? Is it the user? Or is the manager? Who would you blame? Because it's not going to go in anybody's performance eval.
What a great question, Anshu.
Well, I don't think we've solved that yet. And I say that because, for instance, when we're talking to customers, there are some folks who are actually looking for indemnification for all sorts of things, right? And that might be about whether something has been copyrighted. It might be about decisions that are being made. So I actually think it's a great question. It's being sorted out right now. And at least the model that we have is, and this was talked about earlier in one of the discussions, but not depending on these for some of these critical life or death kinds of decisions. Really think about things where it's reversible, right? And in that way, the responsibility you may still be able to assign, but you're not so worried about when something goes wrong.
I agree with that. I think a lot of the workloads we are seeing, contact centers or virtual agents aside, which are typically not life or death, there is a human in the loop. So the human who is in the loop is responsible for the final, has to take responsibility at this point. But as we go to things like fully automated systems, even like, then in that case, these questions really come to the forefront.
Yeah, I mean, my take on that would be, indemnification obviously is going to be important. I think lawyers will have a field day with some of this stuff. But in general, look, I think there is a precedent for that today, right? I mean, you go out in a Waymo and something can go wrong, and who's to blame? Is it the company? I think the company has to take the fall for it, and I'm sure this is going to be a problem that gets solved pretty soon. So. But I think the first line of defense will have to be somebody in the company, the human in the loop, essentially, who is responsible for looking at the final QA procedures and stuff like that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that question, Anshu. Let's end on a practical note. I think the question really is, there are a lot of practitioners in the room. If you want to implement AI, if you are already implementing AI, or if you plan to implement AI, what is some advice, what is some perspective? All of you are leaders in the field that you would like to share with our audience today. Let's end on that note.
Maybe I can start. I think at least the way we are looking at it is, I think we need to be setting expectations correctly with what AI can really do in your organization, right? I think there is, people are looking at this with rose-tinted glasses. They think, there's instant value that AI can bring. They're looking for like moonshot changes in their organization, right? And my advice would be, don't go for that. Set some very realistic goals about what AI can really do in your org. Show success with those goals, and once you show that success, I think it'll be much easier to take that next step. First of all, you'll build trust. I think your employees will build trust with what just happened. That this is actually not something to fear. It is something that can bring benefit. And then taking that next step will be a lot more easier.
Yeah. So you want to go ahead? I think that's interesting because in general, we don't see a lot of rose-tinted glasses. We see customers being really cautious and being very thoughtful and careful in how they are deploying AI inside their organizations. So, and that's fair, right? I mean, that's fair. They're running big businesses. They have a lot at stake. So I think my advice would be like thoughtful, careful experimentation and encouragement on small scale, on starting with, maybe not so critical, but trying to see what efficiencies you can bring in and encouraging that so you get the groundswell of AI practitioners, and then you supplement it with the top-down approach as well. So I think if you bring those together, then you're in a good place.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think my advice would be implementing AI is not a switch. You don't go on or off. You have to go through it in a very regimented manner, start off small and then grow, certain tasks and then grow. And then secondly, I'll add to that is you have to really look at the roles of people who are going to support you in this AI journey. And we'll start seeing people becoming more generalists, where you're not just doing one thing, you're now doing multiple parts of different things, because that's the only way AI will work, is if you have a much broader perspective of how it interfaces with the entire organization. Those are the two things that I would definitely recommend.
I'm going to give you some bad advice, particularly if you're a CFO. Close your ears. I think there's, rightly so, there's so much focus on how to make something cheaper, a cost savings, ROI, as fast as you can within the quarter, or you kill the project. But that's not really where the true innovation happens. And so if I had any recommendation, it would be sort of release some of the requirements for ROI and just experiment and really understand how that might change your business in ways that other businesses aren't willing to change.
And just to add to that, ROI doesn't always have to be dollar-based. You can look at ROI from different perspectives. It can be CSAT based. Are your people happier? Are they not happier? But I agree with you. It's not a switch or something. Say, are we seeing it this quarter? Next quarter? No. Let's scan it.
Can I just add to that? I love that answer. I think, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Zoom products, so pardon me for that. We have this product called Zoom AI Companion, which runs on all your meetings. It transcribes, it does action items. Now we are automatically getting them into tasks. So the idea behind all that is, what's the ROI? Yeah, you save like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, but it's really about being able to focus on something which is more engaging, the conversation, rather than all the other supplementary things that you would do around it, or scanning thousands of chat messages rather than getting a quick summary. So I think these are the kind of things which it's really like work has become so noisy and so transactional, right? Like in COVID, everything exploded in terms of how much information is coming. So how do you get the noise out? Whether, I mean, this is one example, other work as well. So people can focus on being more creative, more energized. And to me, that's a great step in the right direction.
On that hopeful note, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the panel, and thank you, everyone.
Guys.